stream through YouTube. For those that are at home, I hope this is coming through well. It's a bit of a test here. So please bear with this information. If you can't hear, we'll work it out for next time. And there's 3 other opportunities for open forums. So, just a couple introductions. Number 1, my name is Mark Keither. I've been a member here at Good Shepherds for 20 plus years with my family, so I've got a little depth of experience here. To my left, Pastor Lehrman from Divine Peace. He and I have kind of been the ones that were to head up this little project here, so that's why we're in front of you taking all the bullets, so to speak. So, number 1, I guess we'd like to start off a little bit by talking about the history, how we got to where we are today. And some of you have heard this before, but some of you haven't, so I want to start at the beginning. For those of you that have heard this before, fantastic. We started talking about this process in 2018 talking a little bit about souls, because we already have some joint efforts there on athletics, and looking at locations where we can find souls, moving to a little bit more mind ministries as well, especially in 2018 and 2019, when we were looking at the Miracle of Heaven and possible closure on that. That didn't go through, so we did pause. Okay, what do we do next? And that's when we started talking with Pastor Ryan and Vincent, and also Divine Peace joins at that point in time as well, just working together between all 4 congregations. That's when we started the M4M program, which is something that City has developed to help congregations that are looking at potential merger. So we're going through a process here. This is not something that we're making up. This is not something that is kind of, we'll see how we're going as we go along. This is something that City has developed to get through the process to make sure it's done correctly. Okay? The first part of that process really is talking about what your core values are, the exploration and assessment part of it. So talking about what the congregations individually are strong at, what the congregations individually are doing, what their weaknesses are. Weaknesses and analysis, right? Weakness, opportunity, threat. And then taking a look at core values of the congregations together and seeing how much commonality there is between the 4 congregations. So once you get through that process, then you're on to taking a look at, okay, if we would come together, what are the mission and values? What are the points that might be deal breakers? Okay, so talking about things like, okay, school support ministry, all congregations have school, evangelism, mission ministry, stuff that's not working. Where could be other congregations taking a look at, can we work together as 4 congregations? And the answer that we found was yes, we can. So that's when we started really moving forward on putting together the mission and vision and values and what can we look like together, okay? So that's the stage we're at right now as far as, where are we at in this process. So, we've got a few things coming. Obviously, we've got a lot of tactical stuff we've got to look at, so that's when you're taking a look at that little bullet point up there. It's a different color. That's what's in the future. So, why consider a merger? Why are we looking at this at all? Well, I think there are a number of things that have happened over time in the congregations that, makes this something interesting to take a look at. I think one of the things you also have to understand is that the congregations all have a history of change at some point, okay? We're not all in the same building that we started at. Some of us are not in the same location that we started at. So there is a history in the West Allis area of making adjustments based on what our area tells us is best for ministry. There have been some demographic and societal changes as well. Back in the day, Wells wanted to plant neighborhood churches, very close to each other, and that's what we're seeing. The distance between each of the congregations, I think the maximum distance is about 2 miles, so it's not far. As society has changed, and I've got a great example of this. I've got a coworker of mine who's been doing a little church hopping, and one of the things he said that really stuck out to me is, well, the one church I visited was 15 minutes away. That's not that far. 15 minutes gets you a long ways these days, okay? Get in your car, 15 minutes is a long way away. So one of the things taking a look at is, do we need to have 4 churches in such close proximity to each other? I think also, there's been a little bit of a lack of outcome, if you will. We're seeing constraints in some of the ministries. Here at Good Shepherds, we've got school and childcare, which has been very successful. However, because the two are in the same building and in the same space, the childcare is constrained because we can't grow it to as large as we want to, and the school is somewhat constrained because we have limited number of classrooms based on the fact that childcare is taking some as well. So there are things in ministry that are just constraints. And some of them are financial as well. I mean, schools are not cheap to run. So when you start having congregations of a certain size, it's very difficult for them to operate a school as well. Also just duplication of efforts. Right now we've got 4 pastors writing 4 sermons every Sunday, okay? We've got pastors that are trying to do all things to their congregation instead of maybe working on some of the specialties and specializations that they could do to more effectively minister to a congregation. So there are a lot of different reasons as to why we are looking at that merger. And then I think a lot of it leads to what we've seen historically over the last couple of years in the congregations. If you look at where we've been since 2000, we've had some pretty significant declines in each of the congregations. You're looking at Jordan as the example there at negative 65%. Now, if you look at that top line, the green line, you're seeing West Dallas. Population of West Dallas has increased by 2% since the year 2000. So our ministry field has not shrunk, okay? That has not changed. What's changed is, I think, our dedication to evangelism, how evangelism works in today's society, and just understanding the West Dallas community is a transient community. People start families here, then they move elsewhere, and for one reason or another, even if they're 15 minutes away, they've decided not to retain their membership at our congregations. So I think that all comes together. So that kind of leads us then to what we've done so far as M4M, taking a look at some of those things. That's a lot of, if you want to say, I don't want to say negative, but some of the reasons as to why we've taken a look at it. And we'll get some other reasons a little bit later on as to why we think this is a good opportunity for us. So now I want to concentrate a little bit on what we've put together as far as our mission and our values as a potential merged congregation. So, the mission. It's not long, but there's a lot into it, and we took a long time putting this together. So let me just read that verbatim for you. To personally and collectively lead all people to know Jesus and grow in a relationship with God. There's a lot packed into those words. First of all, personally and collectively. I think a lot of times these days we think of church as a corporate entity where the church will do it. The church will do it. Well, we are the church, okay? So that's the personal part of that. When we're talking about evangelism, when we're talking about relational evangelism and how we can reach our community, we want this unified church to be something that puts at its core that this is also a personal thing. It's not just about the church doing it, it's about me doing it. And of course, collectively, yes, we are a body, so we want to do things together as well. And then, of course, the Great Commission, lead all people to know Jesus. We have our particular corner of the world in the West Dallas area, but we can also spread that out. We've got means that we can do things online. There are ways we can get outside of West Dallas as well. So that's part of that all people. And to know Jesus and then grow in a relationship with God. We're not just talking about bringing in new members, and that's fantastic, and okay, now you're here. Now, how can you grow? And that encompasses anything from people coming to faith, babies, baptism, childcare, school, teen ministry, discipleship as you're an adult, going all the way through until, as I say, you graduate to heaven, okay? So that growing, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our people as well. So there's a lot packed into that mission. And then, of course, that gets us to some of the other values that have grown out of that mission. And the first one of those values, and this actually, if you want to follow along, it's all in the booklet that you picked up, or will be available as a PDF as well for those online. So the first value is first for a reason. There's a lot of this discussion that can go around change. And we want to start with one thing that is absolutely not going to change, regardless of what congregation looks like. And that's gospel-centered biblical truth. You know, faithfully proclaiming the uncompromised word of God, pointing people to the forgiving peace of God that is found in Jesus. That is one thing that is not going to change. Always, 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 word of God in its truth and purity. The second one then, courageous evangelism. As we've talked about, this is something that's changed over time. How people understand and receive the Word of God. There are more and more people these days that just don't even know who Jesus is. What's this God thing? So there are different ways to reach people, and we want to make sure that that's part of what's centered around this new congregation. The third one, engaging worship. Now, those of you that know me know I'm kind of a music guy, so this one kind of excites me, because I think being able to pool the talents of all the people from 4 congregations musically, I think would be very good. And that's not just about music, it's just about excellence in worship. You've got pastors that then will be concentrating on a sermon, as opposed to trying to do a sermon and a bunch of other things, as we can divide up some of the tasks there. And then just a matter of how we deliver it. We want to make sure there's excellence in worship, making sure that we are doing the best we can to glorify God and bring people into the church. Fourth one, intentional discipleship. Again, growing at all stages of life, as I talked about before. So knowing the head, the heart, the hands. I think that's going to be very important as well. Fifth, welcoming Christian community. Again, we want to make sure that when somebody comes to visit us, that they're welcome. I'll go back to my example again of my coworker. He visited a congregation. They found out that he was new there, first time there. The person that greeted him took him on an entire tour of the campus, showed him everything. There was pride in that, okay? And wanted that person to be a part of it as well. I thought that was a great example. I mean, good job on that church. I think that's something that we can definitely do. And again, being part of the community, welcoming the community to us. That's a lot of what we want to do as well. And then impactful service. One of the things we want to make sure too is we have an engaged congregation, an engaged membership, and that they know and understand how to be Christians in the world today, right? So going out there, serving your community, and then how can we as a church serve the community as well? I think that's very important. So, you've heard a lot from me. I'm now going to turn it over to Pastor Lehrman, who's going to talk a little bit more about the vision of the congregation that we've developed.
So, have a congregation and congregations that are in a particular community. Any one of them could say, yes, our job is evangelism and discipleship. We have purposes and values from our God of what types of things a church should be doing. Each church has to then ask, well, how are we going to do that in a unique way to serve our particular place that God has given us to spread the gospel? And so over lots and lots of time over the last 2 years, we've had a chance to study our community better, to really look at our congregations, what's working, what's not, and looked at other churches that are being successful and what can we learn from them that God might use if we use that model or way of doing things to help spread the gospel in our world. And so the vision is really a dream of what we think this church could be as we come together, and begins to give us an insight into some of the exciting things that we think God might be able to use us to do. The introduction to this is the vision statement that says, we dream of a thriving, mission-minded church that is taking bold steps in faith to do something new and different, to be faithful in our mission, and more effective for God's kingdom. Thriving instead of struggling. Mission-minded instead of only taking care of ourselves. And ready to take some bold steps. I mean, merger in itself is a bold step of faith, but as this church works forward, to be ready to try doing some things in a little bit different way, and to learn to do some things in a new way, that enables us to not only continue to be faithful in our mission, but that God might, through doing some things in different ways we adapt to bringing the gospel to our world and our community, could be more effective and see more people coming to faith and more people gathering together and more people growing in their faith. We pray that God might use this to make that kind of an outcome. So what specifically can this thriving mission-minded church do to pursue this kind of outcome? We have 6 core key areas that address the ministry of this new congregation. The first is relational evangelism. We live in a world where, you go back 50 years ago, over the course, especially the heart of our success at our congregations, there were new people that moved into the neighborhood. They used to go to church, but now they got to find a new church because they moved here and they're coming looking for a new church. The days of church shoppers, there's still them out there, but they are way less. In only a couple years, half of the United States will identify themselves as having no religious affiliation. We have a huge mission field right here in our own country, and including right here in our own area of Milwaukee. How do you reach those people? The key way everyone has been saying and finding what God is using is relational evangelism. And what that means is we have to build a relationship with people. We got to get to know them, let them get to know us, understand what's going on in their life, and use that relationship to share the gospel. This new church would model that. This new church would help you be able to better share your faith with the people in your life. Evangelism also has had a thing thrown at us this past year of having to do a lot of things online and digital. That's not going away, and this church has a chance to really take a whole digital and online strategy to a new level, as really our website has now become the new front door of any church. Relational evangelism. We invite people to know Jesus. We want them to come and gather with us. And we believe this new church could really offer an amazingly excellent worship experience. You have a bigger church, you have more resources, you can just do things at a whole lot better level. And a lot of times when people are looking for a church, they have their choices. They want to go a place where, it's a really great experience. Great preaching, great music, and opportunity to stay engaged and not go away. Boy, that was kind of a boring experience. We're also suggesting that this be a church that embraces a blended style of worship potentially. And what that would mean is that rather than just full traditional and not full blown out contemporary, that it would take the best of the old and the best of the new, and really use that to honor the tradition of the church, as well as to speak to the heart and the ear of people today in making a neat worship experience that our members would love to be a part of, in that they're excited to invite others to come and experience as well. The third one is intentional discipleship. Sometimes we put a lot of efforts in our churches to teaching kids to know God, and sometimes adults don't engage in that as much. Even when we do, sometimes it isn't quite as much of a coordinated thing. Smaller churches often can only offer maybe 1 or 2 Bible classes, and it's hard to offer a variety of things that really meet people where they're at and the area where they need to grow in their next step of faith. This new church will be able to really have a whole lot more discipleship opportunities to grow in a discipleship pathway, to get into the really deep stuff if you've been a lifelong Lutheran, or to get the basics if you're brand new to the faith, to help people grow wherever they are in a very intentional and purposeful way, to help you grow closer to God and be better at living your faith as you walk with the Lord. The fourth one is connecting in relationships. Relationships are huge, not only for us in sharing the gospel with other people, but the opportunity that God has for us to be connected to one another. One of the things all of our churches valued that we've heard from is the connection and the relationships and the closeness that you have with one another. In a bigger church, that does not need to go away. In fact, a bigger church, you might have even more opportunities for relationships because there's a bigger pool of people to draw from whom you might find a connection and have something to relate with one another. But relationships are so huge because we get to walk beside each other, we get to be connected to each other. It's not just about a social club. It's about being there to support one another, and I'm here to look out for you, and you're looking out for me. And one of the blessings that God brings in being a part of a Christian congregation. The next one is dynamic children's ministries. We know we have 2 schools that can become one and take the whole school and educational experience to a whole nother level, but other ministries as well. Sunday school and teen ministries that are going to serve all the children of our congregation, as well as be outreach opportunities for those in our community. A bigger church can offer this and can really be a blessing for our people, and something that a lot of people, if they are looking for a church, one of their first questions if they have kids is what do you got for my kids? And having something that really is going to help those kids grow in the faith and experience in a positive way helps you connect with the family. Another one is equipping the family. And this is a unique one that we've adopted in the proposal because if you look out at our society today, family is really under attack in a lot of different ways. What a cool thing it could be for a church to say, you know what, we stand up for family, we champion the family, and in fact, we want to help your family succeed. And so we're able to really be able to put specialized resources into helping marriages just be thriving, help parents know how to raise their kids and keep that family unit together. That can be a blessing in so many different ways for them, for the church, and certainly for our society at large. So those are our 6 key areas that we see of the vision, and the booklet digs into each of them in a little more detail. But there's also some things that help supporting making that vision happen. One of them is the opportunities for volunteering and growing in leadership development. Big church, it takes a lot of people to help make that happen. We're not just going to hire a whole bunch of staff to do everything for us. This church has an opportunity to really get our membership involved in some very meaningful ways and to serve the Lord with the gifts that He has given them. Inspiring generosity, because it's going to take money to fund what we're talking about doing here, and encouraging people to be a part of something new and exciting to help make this happen for the Lord. A new church and a bigger church will also mean learning some new ways of doing things. Right now we have, amongst our 4 churches, we have what would be referred to as 2 small churches and 2 medium-sized churches. By coming together, we can create a large church. And most churches, as they go into different sizes, find that they just need to operate a little bit different way. They might staff and structure themselves in a different way. And also, as we look to do something new in how we approach ministry, just kind of learning and navigating some of those new approaches and styles of ministry. And then our hope would be that we would be on a new renovated campus, that our 4 churches would combine to be in one location. And it might be that we end up at a brand new site that we don't currently own, or it might be that we take one of our current sites, expand it to be bigger by buying up adjacent properties, and then redevelop that to be able to serve this new church. In your booklet, you also see some merger guidelines. I'm not going to go through all of those. You can read them at home, but a lot of people sometimes wonder if a merger will work. The truth is, there are a lot of mergers that have not really been very successful when you look back on them years later. And a lot of those mergers were kind of forced. They were kind of survival mergers, and they didn't make a lot of changes when they came together. We've had a chance to study and learn about churches that have had a very successful merger when it comes to having true unity in coming together, and also having better outcomes by being together rather than apart. And we're looking at those guidelines to guide us in some of the practices and things you might do to make this potential merger something that's successful. What are some of the positive outcomes that might happen as we carry out this vision? It's exciting to think about and dream and to imagine how God might use this, and Mark's going to talk about some of those.
I think one of the things that, before we even get into the bullet points, as far as a positive outcome, and part of the M4M process and program is it's just so ministry minded. It tries to make sure you keep the ministry first in everything you do and think about. So I think that's one of the first things I see that's real positive right there. Is really refocusing our efforts on what's important. So as far as some of the potential positive outcomes, new balance and renewal, life to ministries. Yeah, so just what I was talking about. So that was the first bullet point. Really getting centered back on what's important. Reaching more people. That's one of the things we really want to concentrate on. We have the mission field in West Dallas. We just need to get out there, and in the greater West Dallas area. We just need to get out there and have the resources and the tools and have people available to help train and to help put together the programs that will get us out there individually and as a church. And again, opportunities to grow at all stages of faith life. Really be able to put programs together that can help people from birth through all the way. Volunteers. Right now, again, we've got 4 congregations with volunteers duplicating a lot of efforts in the things they're doing as individual congregations. And wouldn't it be great if somebody that is volunteering doing 3 or 4 or 5 different things at their church maybe can concentrate on that 1 or 2 things that they're really passionate about, because there are other people that can work on those 3 or 4 other things that they were doing. That's something that's really exciting as well. And then, a new level of excellence and enrichment. Or is that excitement? Either one, both. Just get reinvigorated and renewed. To just get out there and find more people for Christ. I think that's something that's really positive as well. Eliminating duplication of efforts again. Making sure that we've got people in the things they want to do, not just because they have to do it, but because they want to do it. Let's see. Focused on ministry rather than financial struggles. Sorry, it's a little small for me. Focus on ministry rather than financial struggles. Yes. So in other words, we're not designing ministry around what we got the dollars for, we're not using the dollars to fund the ministry that we can, but we're really designing the ministry and then putting the dollars into it, which is, I know, something we've talked about a lot at Good Shepherds, but to really put that into practice, I think it'd be fantastic. And operational savings. Again, because there's so much duplication of efforts, we're seeing that there is a lot of ways that we could streamline the ministry and do things like fund more to Wells, fund more to Wisco, fund more internal programming, different things that we can do there, making sure that our called workers are treated appropriately. I think those are all things that we can really concentrate on. Making sure that Synod Code isn't just an idea, but it's actuality, okay? I think those are important things. So, obviously, we've heard a lot of questions already. We'll get to yours in a bit, but there's a lot of things that we've thought about. There's a lot of things we've talked about as an M4M team, okay? So we just want to highlight probably some of the things that are on your mind. So the first one, okay, we're talking about this large church. Obviously, we don't have a campus right now that can house a large church. Where is this all going to be? Well, we have talked about that, and there is a segment of the M4M team that's talked about property and location and some ideas there. So, there's nothing that's set in stone right now, but we've got 4 or 5 different ideas of potential campuses that are out there right now. So obviously, we'll have to look into the viability of each of those as we decide to move forward. Can we sell? How much can we sell for? If we're going to find a new campus, is that even economically viable? Right now, we had an opinion of value put together on all the properties that the churches own. That's both the churches, the schools, the houses that are rented, all of that property. We think net will be at $3 to $4 million if we did have to liquidate everything to find a different campus. Now, that does not include also some of the other things on the balance sheet relative to cash available, what we do with trust funds and endowment funds. And again, that $3 to $4 million, I think, is a very conservative estimate as to what we would actually have available. And can we sell? Yeah, I think we can. I mean, there are going to be buyers out there. I know we've talked to some people that might have some interest already. So it's out there. Sorry. Decided to go a little bit further on that one. Staff. What's the staff going to look like? That's a good question. And I think, number one, it somewhat depends on what the outcome of the votes is relative to the merger process, okay? That's something that we will develop a team for, to make sure that we have good staffing. That's something that we'll be working with Synod on as far as staffing guidelines as well. So we can't tell you right now what the staff's going to look like, for what we have as far as the vision of the school, yeah, we're probably going to need all the teachers, okay? As far as pastors, we have 6 right now. As Pastor Lehrman has said, there is no Wells congregation with 6 pastors right now. So, I mean, there's going to have to be some adjustments made. As to what that looks like, that will come down the line. School. What's going to happen with the school? Okay? There's going to be a transition period in there. School is going to be a little bit more complicated. We've got the choice program that we need to make sure that we're working with and how that can come together. The vision right now would be that the schools would work and operate the way they are operating right now through the next school year, and then we would look at combining at that point. That, of course, is subject to change depending on how things come together from an organizational standpoint, from a choice program standpoint, but that would be the vision right now. So, we talked about this a little bit before. Okay, this big congregation, are we going to lose that personal feel? And I think the short answer to that is, if we do it right, no. As Pastor talked about, there is more opportunity with more people to find more people like yourself that have common interests, common goals. So again, it's a matter of how we really take and run with that as a congregation to make sure that relational part of it is very important. Pastor Lehrman will go through now some of the next steps that are coming after we go through the open forums. So, Pastor?
So we've been going through this process of lots and lots of hours and study and discussion. So where do we go from here as far as this process? So right now we're having the open forums with all the congregations. You're the first one here today. Next Sunday we'll have one with Woodlawn and Jordan, and then at Divine Peace the following Sunday. And most, if not all, the churches are planning follow-up forums because we're hearing the information. We're kind of getting to talk a little bit about it. We go and think about it. Chance to come back and have some more conversations with one another. So watch for those opportunities, because the truth is we need your input. We want your input. We want you to tell us what is good, what is great, what don't you like, what are you concerned about, what questions do you have. We want to be able to answer those as best we can, and if there's something we need to go back and adjust in the plan, something that we're ready to do. At some point we want to do a member straw poll then, where we have the chance for all the adult members, men and women, to give input of whether they think this is a good idea and that yes, we should do this or not. And that gives information for the voters then to eventually have a voters meeting and do an official vote on behalf of the congregation, and that straw poll will inform them, what really is the feel of the congregation, and they're not just assuming or guessing that. That merger vote does have a date to it right now, March 14th, but if we find that we just need some more time to process and think about this, we're going to be ready to make an adjustment to that. Once churches vote to be a part of the merger, we'll be able to then begin to get to some of the details and planning of how to really pull this off and pull this together. So there'll be a transition team that's formed, most likely with equal representatives from each of the congregations. And they'll begin to work on the plans and the logistics and the legal steps that have to happen to pull a merger together. That'll include working with the Synod, our district president, and Pastor Hine, who's been our Synod consultant, who will help us talk through the staffing plan and the structure for the congregation and how to really set things up from a leadership and government standpoint. At that point, we'll be able to issue calls, starting probably with the pastors and then the teachers, and work to get the staff in place that is going to lead the church and minister to the church, and staff that can then work on getting more specific and detailed when it comes to some more short-term strategies and plans for ministry. Potentially, because that's going to take some time to all come together, we'll have the chance then for a first joint worship of this new congregation about 4 to 6 months after that vote would take place. We'll just need some time to kind of get it all together and wrap things up in our current churches and places and be ready to come together and start something new. And that first joint worship, we're probably not going to fit in any of our churches right now. That's one of the issues. But we think we can have some temporary things, whether it's a gym like you have here set up for worship, renting a larger space like one of the school auditoriums in the area that would give us all a place to really come together and begin to feel like this one new church again.
What I'd like to do now is just tell you a little bit more about the M4M team. When we're doing these open forums, we want to have representatives of each of the congregations here, so I just want to acknowledge them right now. Jamin Wendorf is here from Woodlawn. Jess Wohler is here. That might be a familiar face to some of you. She's also our admin over at school here at Good Shepherd. So, Mike Gittens from Jordan is here with us as well. And then the members that we have from Good Shepherd's here as well. Charlotte Loper has been one of the members, as well as Ryan Bogenschneider. And then, of course, our pastors as well, Pastor Zarling and Pastor Wempner. So if you wanted to come forward, please, and maybe just give a little bit of, your experience on M4M so far and kind of your thoughts on this, that would be fantastic. We've got mics on either side here, so whoever gets to one first.
Hi there. I'm Charlotte Loper. I've been a member here at Good Shepherd's since 2010, I believe, so a couple of years. And one of the reasons I really wanted to be involved in this process was sort of just, I feel like, it really had the potential to benefit our community, our churches, and I really wanted to be part of that as we explore that opportunity.
Ryan?
So I first joined the initial discussions 2 years ago, and then when M4M, sorry, thought my voice was loud enough. I initially joined a couple of years ago when the three congregations were talking, and then Divine Peace obviously heard about it and reached out, and then that's when we brought the synod in. And I just think that it's a very unique opportunity to do this. There's so many churches nearby, and I think it presents kind of a new opportunity for all of us to do something different and to really take the churches into the next 100 years.
Hi everybody, Pastor Zarling here. Nice to see you. I've been directed to speak on behalf of both myself and Pastor Webner, and I guess the one thought I would have throughout this process is it is amazing how God will sometimes put options in front of you that greatly excite you. Sometimes he puts options in front of you where you go, I don't want that option right now. And for each of us, this whole discussion may be on a different end of that. But through all of these things, God does bring blessing. And I'm really going, aren't I? All I will say is God does bring blessing. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I guess at this point in time, we'd like to open it up to any questions you've got. Now, with the fact that we are live streaming this and recording this, if you do have questions, if you're comfortable, please come up to one of the mics so we can get that recorded as well. If not, we'll say it again, but we like to have that. And anyone online who has any questions or comments, please use the comments section. Michael, have we had any questions or comments that have come in so far? Okay. So as we move forward, if there are any, Michael will address those as well. So, questions?
I've got several. How many active churchgoers do you expect to be involved if all four churches just go for the merger?
So combined, we have 1,400 members in our congregations, and we have a collective average worship of around 600 as far as active attendance. Now we realize that not everybody may choose to be a part of the new church for all kinds of different reasons, including some that are driving from farther away just because they got a tie to the church and maybe they decide to join the local church across the street now. So there's potential, that not everybody would be, but that's why we're, planning that we'd have 500 plus people in worship to start with.
Okay, how big is 5 acres? What is the acreage of the Good Shepherd's property as a comparison?
I believe we're about 2.8, if I recall, 2.3. It's 2.3, 2.8. If you talk at
If we extended the property, including Pastor Webner's house, over one street to the west and down to the corner here by the Union Hall, would we be around 5 acres?
yes,
Okay.
we would be over 5 acres.
Okay.
If you take the parsonage, Pastor Wentmer's house right there, go over to 101st Street, down, including the Union Hall, you would be well over 5 acres.
Okay. So then the structures that might occur, one, obviously a church. Second would be a school as either part of the church or a standalone structure. And then the childcare would be its own structure or part of the school or part of the church or whatever. And a parking lot. That's what we're looking at, right?
Yes,
And a playground.
just for you, Rich.
Well, just been there, done that. We've talked about these things for years.
Yeah, the rule of thumb in church building is you want at least 1 acre for every 100 people. And so 5 acres, we'd like 7. And it just probably is, there's no place in West Dallas where that's going to happen.
With
But like,
okay.
yeah, just so you have room for growth and expansion. But like Mark said, we have at least 5 potential places that, including Good Shepherds here, that we believe could be 5 acres.
Okay, so we've tried to expand here before and do some things, and the city wasn't very cooperative, from my understanding. They wouldn't change the zoning or whatever. So, what changes need to happen, or have they already happened, that would make the city more amenable to us doing something like this?
I guess that's an unknown right now.
Okay.
I'll be honest there, that's an unknown right now. You know, that might be at some point what moves us one direction or another relative to where the campus will be.
Sure.
We've also begun to establish some relationships with the city folks. And
Okay.
even the conversations that happened around the Mary Queen of Heaven property that took place, where we think we have a chance to say, hey, you know, we really need you to work with us here. We might be putting some property back on the tax rolls. We need you to help us. We want to do something great for our community. We want to make West Dallas better. So work with us to help us do that. So.
You know, I would say on that standpoint, and Ryan can probably back me up there too, but I think West Dallas was fairly supportive of what we wanted to do. I think we ran into some issues with the particular Mary Queen of Heaven property, but as far as expansion and things like that, they understand what we're trying to do.
Ideally, would being further east meet the mission goals? Or doesn't it, you said 15 minutes, yeah, I get that. You know, isn't very far, but that assumes that everyone has a vehicle. And we know that everyone doesn't have a vehicle, so,
Well, and I don't want that 15 minutes to make people assume that we're all of a sudden going to start looking at putting the church in Brookfield or Elm Grove. Obviously,
I
West
get it,
Dallas.
I
yeah.
get it.
But relative to location, I mean, we've taken a look at, I would say West Dallas all over. So that's still an open question. I mean, I think we would probably lean more towards the west side of West Dallas, but we will see what becomes available.
That's
and
where the
we'll land.
acreage is.
The other thing you run into with you know, and it's laid out basically of what the dream is, and it's very flexible in what meets the criteria, right? It's got to be accessible, it's got to be visible, and you can't build a church buried in a neighborhood that no one knows you're there. Accessible, whether that's main thoroughfares, off the freeway, things like this. The other thing that plays into that too is we're mindful that we have lots of other Wells churches in Milwaukee, right? And so you don't want to be across the street from another Wells church like they are in Watertown. You know, and so there is some thought of, hey, we do have Nain on the east side that will continue to be independent, and we'll kind of try to be located somewhere on the west side.
Last one, your next steps. What is the timeline for that? Like, how fast could it be, or how drawn out are we willing to let it go?
This has been a thing that we've had a hard time working to kind of come together on between our four churches. There are some that were ready to do it 2 years ago, and like, where do I sign and make this happen? For others, you know, this is kind of a bold step and idea, and people are still kind of processing it and realizing that, boy, I'm gonna, in a sense, not have the church that I've had these strong ties to, right? And to go and be willing to give that up for the sake of what, you know, we think this potentially could be. So we did put a timeline in as far as our M4M team that talked about, you know, a couple months here, but voting before Easter this year to proceed. That would allow us to start worshiping together as a new church, you know, this coming fall. And basically, we're doing these open forums to kind of just see and get a read of, you know, are people ready to do this, or do we just need a little more time to kind of talk about it or change anything, you know, before we're all comfortable doing that. But there are lots of churches that emerged, you know, within 6 months of starting the process even, and move forward with it, and others where, you know, they spread it out over a couple of years. So it's a little bit, we had a plan in place, but we're ready to be flexible as we have these discussions with everybody.
Just some final comments then. Having been with church leadership through some difficult times here at Good Shepherds, we were considered closing the school. We went through a number of construction projects to make the facilities more friendly. Those were all successful. I can only feel for those churches that are really struggling for whatever reasons that they are struggling, whether they be financial or just attendance or vision or people that can step up and lead, whatever they are, I can really feel for them. So frankly, I'm in strong support of doing something like this. I really think we can only be better for it. The only thing that I would actually consider is perhaps having maybe 2 campuses, one that is more of a school, and which allows one to grow, and one which is more of a church, which allows that to grow. I know that's difficult, but I would certainly not want to bid ourselves out of space.
We appreciate it, Rich. Thank you.
Each of the churches has some neat things to thank God for, and good stuff that's going, and each has, you know, challenges and stuff that's going on. All have been on decline, you know, as far as size. Your school is 25% smaller than it was, you know, with continued challenges, and so everybody has unique things that have not been going well that potentially can be overcome by the merger. So thanks for your questions and comments.
Do we have anything from online? Okay, we've got 2 from online, so Michael, why don't we touch base on those?
Okay, so the first one would be, will we continue on with the merger if only 2 or 3 churches vote in favor of it?
Yep, that's an awesome question. So, you know, most mergers are 2 churches trying to come together. And here we have 4 that have been involved in these discussions. So that's kind of a whole nother, you know, level of complexity that has made the process take a little bit longer to get where we are today. The truth is that there could be a merger that happens between 2 churches, there could be a merger that happens with 3, there could be a merger that happens with 4. So if one or more in the end say, no, we just don't think we fit in with this, then there still would be the chance to relook at the plan and still make it happen. So it's not dependent on all 4 going in. All 4 would certainly put us in the strongest position.
Okay, and the second one would be, are you able to divulge where some of the potential properties may be?
So one of the challenges you have when you're potentially on the buyer's market is that you really don't want it to get out that you're looking for a property. What happens when you do that is the price starts going up and someone else may even get in there and jump on it before you do. So what we can say is we have at least 5 locations. 2 of those are current sites. including Good Shepherds. So we've seen, as we discussed here, there's the potential to expand this campus. It needs some more research and some more digging into what that would look like, and to get some professionals involved to really talk about our options and costs and things like that. But Good Shepherds is one of them that would potentially be a place.
I have a concern about the two words, radical hospitality. I'm not saying that that's a bad idea, but I am concerned that we bring unchurched and church cultures together. Frequently, one side or the other feels, or both, feel a lack of respect. Hurt feelings can happen when some people maybe expect more quiet, some other outward ways to show respect for the first service. And I think we might need a lot of training going into this, so that we understand what we're expecting when we try to bring people in, so that we say things that are considered respectful. Some people might try to defend the faith in a way that comes across as unloving. And I think some work on that ahead of time would be useful.
Absolutely, and that's what's exciting about this, is that, this is something we all got to help make happen together. And part of learning how to better welcome and better interact with those that are different than me and aren't making the same choices or saying the same things, because they haven't had God in their life, right? We actually thought about changing that particular phrase. We just didn't get to it with the wordsmithing. So radical hospitality doesn't mean being liberal or crazy or something like that. Basically, it just means is let's be all out and ready to give ourselves and ready to give up, some of my personal stuff to welcome people, to let them know we're so glad they're here, and to just, be ready to say you're the guest and we are here to serve you today, and we want you to make you feel like, feel special because you're here. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time today for this open forum. Had a couple questions. One of them is on the handout on page 7, number 5. Worship in a neutral location from the day of the official merger. That's different from what you guys have on the PowerPoint, and I just wanted to kind of call that. I'm assuming the PowerPoint is correct, 4 to 6 months, and so people should kind of scratch number 5 as being official. Is that correct?
So what's behind that is that when it comes to any transition period that may happen, for example, with the school, we know that we might have to keep both schools operating as they are on their own campuses for a while until we get to the point of having one combined school. When it comes to the church, however, it's easier to merge church, and so it's not saying that once we have the vote to merge that we have to joint, but that when we say this is opening Sunday, this is kickoff, we want to worship together in the same space and not continue to say, well, we'll worship at 2 or 3 churches for a while till we can build our own big enough sanctuary.
So I apologize for my confusion. So let's say 4 churches go and they all approve this. The following Sunday, we are choosing a church and all worshiping together in that church?
No, that's the 4 to 6 month time frame that would happen.
Okay.
To pull everything together.
So and that kind of segues into a lot of smaller questions that I have is, and I will openly say I am someone who I'm not against the idea of a merger, okay? My more concern is some of the details of the merger. I would more rather have it be a situation of genuine excitement to be merging, and not in the idea of, as you talk about different churches in different places, and we've been in financial struggles and things like that. We don't want to do it because we have to, because from my opinion, if you have people more excited about something, they're buying into something, they're going to make more of an effort to want that to succeed, rather than have a situation where you have a vote and you have people say, I'm just approving this because I know it's the right thing to do, but you know, I'm not energized about it right now. With that being said, one of the questions I have, and if it's, I've been reading this today, if I missed it, I apologize, is, let's say you get the 4 churches, they all approve. What happens to all of the board structures at that moment? Are they all dissolved? If that's the case, then when do you have new elections? When do you have new leadership put into the church? Because it talks about the council, but I'm talking more about, you know, all your evangelism boards, all your stewardship boards, all your, you know, all that stuff. You know, what happens at that time? What happens with everything that's currently in process? You know, has there been something talked about? And if so, I would really like to have possibly that shared before people vote, so they're aware of what happens day one. You know, that's I think what we have here is a good outline of what's coming in the future. And I know you can't nail down certain things like a specific location and things like that, but I really think it would be important for people to understand what are they going to see in the first 6 months to a year. I mean, literally from day one. I think you'll have a better, you'll have less questions and more people buying in.
Yep, great question. So first of all, again, there's a transition that happens when you're going from 4 organizations and going into one. And there's a couple of different legal ways that happens, and they're state specific. But the Synod has experience with helping churches go through that merger and have attorneys that can help you go through all the legal process. At some level, individual congregational leadership on the church councils will have to stay in place for a while until they can wrap up all the affairs of the congregation. And then a new board would be put in place to be in charge of making things move forward, you know, in parallel to get things set up in the new church. So again, we don't have all the details right now of everything because we need to know who's involved, how many churches, what's the mix of staff, what are the resources from the ones that agreed to merge. But we have an idea, and like I said, the Synod has been through this before and has the steps in place to move into that next step to do that transition. And there's a bunch of churches that, you know, have been able to do it very successfully. So.
I'm sorry, I don't want to take everyone's time too much. One thing that's very important for people to understand when they talk about the difference between 2, 3, and 4 churches merging is when you share a number like 1,400, that is the 4 churches merging. And my concern would be, and I think this could negatively impact what you have after a vote, is if you have people vote, let's say Good Shepherd votes yes, okay, and then 1 or 2 out of the other 3 vote no. Then all of a sudden people say, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought we were going to get. Now we only have 800 members. This really isn't much different from what we had before. Is there that type of information? I think is really, my concern is losing members after a vote because of something where they feel, again, perception reality, where they feel that it was a bait and switch, even though that's not what you're doing. But they feel like we weren't given the information. We were told this thing where all the 4 churches come in and we have over 1,000 members, which is going to be over double what we have, and that's not what we got. And now we're no better off than we were and now we just have more concern and less direction. We're not getting that thing that we wanted, that we were excited about. How can we alleviate that from happening?
Well, I would say, number one, when it comes to who's in, who's out, and then what happens after that vote, I really can't speak to that. I mean, we have to see what the vote is, right? If 2 churches decide they want to go forward and 2 not, yeah, I think then we have to take a step back and say, okay, where do we want to go from here? So, I mean, really, I don't know how to answer that too much beyond that.
One possibility, make the straw poll public
It will be.
by congregation.
It will be.
Right, that'll help with that concern. People kind of see which way the wind is blowing, Also provide perhaps a little bit more statistical information of what things would look like. At least here's a congregation, here's the financial position of this church, this church, this church, and this church. Debts, obligations, whatever. That might be helpful too.
Great, thank you.
Jeff?
I think I can project it on the mic. Has there been any discussion for all four congregations at their council level to establish what quorum looks like for this vote? I know at least for us Good Shepherds, I look around the room and I see the same between 30 and 45 people at a meeting. Being able to get a better percentage.
Yep, so,
Let's just say like, hey, 20 people out of my congregation of 600 decided to do this. How do we make sure that everyone's represented
yep.
equally?
Okay, and just so everyone online knows the question too, the question was, does a quorum look like each of the congregations for this vote?
So every church has some unique things of what defines a quorum for the voters' assembly. So each of them will abide by that. But the standard rule of thumb to proceed with the merger that's going to have enough support behind it is that it would need to be approved by at least 2/3 of the voters. So not, you know, present voters is usually how the,
My concern there is, at least here, our congregation, our bylaws say a quorum is who's ever present. So if we get 15 people to show up to the vote, this could improve for a congregation to vote of 9 people. Which, I mean, I don't foresee happening, but
yeah, I mean,
how do we prevent that from happening?
Well, how do we prevent that from happening? Number one, make sure you get to the open forums. Make sure you talk to members of your congregation. Make sure you're letting everybody know what's going on. And our pastors have done a fantastic job of getting out the information in every which way they can as far as getting the membership involved. But that's really what it is. I mean, we've got to get out and talk to people about what's going on. I mean, it's kind of like almost, I don't want to say evangelism within the congregation, but it is kind of that way. We need to make sure we're talking to people. That's huge. That way people are, number one, informed, and then number two, when they come to that vote, they are informed to vote.
and that straw poll will give a sense of the congregation, right? So say you surveyed the whole membership and 80% said, yes, let's do this, this sounds great. I don't care if there were 3 voters that said, let's do this. They're not forcing that on anybody. They're simply implementing what they're hearing the collective voice of the congregation, right? So,
Do we have any other questions from online?
Not so much questions as a few statements, but it would be nice if everyone talking could come up and use the mic, because the online people cannot hear anyone that's not directly on a mic. So please come up and use the mic. And Mike Henning is asking for clarification on the 25% school decline statement, because Good Shepherds has doubled their enrollment in the past 10 years.
I think we're talking about historically, the highs that the enrollment was at one point in time.
Okay, and someone requested for whoever's asking questions to identify themselves. So maybe, yeah.
Okay,
How do
very
you feel
good.
about that? But
Other questions, comments? This would be Paul Wolfgram coming to the microphone.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hey, thank you very much, everybody on the M4M committee for going forward and doing this work. I think that something that's easily taken for granted is the first 6 page of our of the brochure that was handed out, that there's not much discussion or questions or comments on that. And I think that you've done an outstanding job keeping Christ-centered and really the ministry of the congregations and everything moving forward in this proposal. And I think that the proposal is a very exciting opportunity. I think that if we were looking to start a church in West Dallas today, that we would not have 4 churches in different locations so close to each other. One question that I do have looking forward, we're talking about having joint worship starting in 6 months from the day of the merger. I think it's going to be a long time from until we actually have a physical site that's set up for all of us to worship on our own property. I think that could be maybe 4 years. Are you picturing us worshiping in a gym for that long time, or is there something else that's planned? Are we going to maybe do a joint worship like once a month or something like that?
So again, any progress to get to the point of the preferred facility is going to just take some time of selling what we have. How fast does that happen? What does it take to work with an architect to redesign a site? Is there fundraising that happens toward what we don't have currently? Just putting a financial plan in place for all of it. We do have a budget that would allow taking a building loan of a significant amount to couple and make this work financially. Again, the churches that have had a successful merger have taken steps and been willing to be a little bit inconvenienced to do some things that are going to promote unity, because there is a huge step to draw these four congregations to see themselves as this one new church and not as still as our own individual congregations. So what does that timeline look like? Can you get something ready to go in 2 or 3 years, or is it going to take 10? There are some of our churches that have been in temporary facilities for quite a long time. We would hope it'd be on the shorter end of things in making that happen. But there is this huge, thing of feeding the success of the merger long term, of building this unity of saying, you know what, we will worship in a gym. We will go and rent Nathan Hale's auditorium that's beautiful for this period of time, because this goal of establishing this unity and becoming this new church family is worth that on a temporary basis, because we know what we're going to get to eventually.
Rich Gross, coming to the microphone again.
I was born here, in front of a microphone. Those who know me well. A couple of ideas, or maybe you've already done this and I'm just unaware. One, if there are some things that you could be a little bit more specific about with respect to some of the goals that you have, as opposed to, these are bullet points, I understand that. But for example, one of the things that we expect to be able to do by having a combined church is that we will have a best in Milwaukee area STEM program for our pre-K through 8. Or perhaps 6 Bible studies a week that we are guaranteeing that we're going to have, or a dedicated music staff. All right, one person that's going to be making sure that organ's all up to whatever level, choirs, blah blah blah. If you could do some of that, that would help give people an idea of what the vision is, a little bit more than just 4 of us getting together in a big old hall. The other thing is would we be interested in doing 3 services as Good Shepherd's currently does, and 1 on Saturday or Monday, or would we be doing 2 and then a Saturday night and a Monday? What would that look like?
Awesome questions. Yeah, again, some of the more specific details, we've thrown out ideas, we've debated about what might work, but again, it's eventually who's in and what do we need to do to serve that particular group, and for us to not just come up with that on our own, but to have the people that are part of the new congregation helping to identify their needs and what they would like to see in this new church to help make those kinds of things happen. As far as the school specifically, all the things you mentioned are all possibilities. And specifically to the school, there is a step that needs to happen related to the school merger of really doing a very deep school study, bringing in an outside school consultant from the synod that we already have lined up to talk with the staff and the parents and to look at what are the strengths here, what's the best thing to put resources and efforts into to serve our membership and our community. And that is something that's going to take a whole lot of time in doing that, working through that, as well as some investment in money to pay for that consultant and whatever studies we need to do. And so that's part of why we sort of have like a timeout period right here to say, okay, let's talk about who indeed is in at this point, so that investment of time and resources are the folks that really for sure want to help make this happen and able to move forward then with additional information at that point. But yeah, we want to involve the congregations in saying, how can we serve you? And not just come up with that on our own. All the things you mentioned are potentials.
Just a question and maybe a concern. Name, sorry, Rebecca Isles. When it comes to the schools, are we prepared for a longer timeline? Because I know we're looking at next year, business as usual, and then a new school the next year. I feel like that might be rushing it. Setting up a new school takes a lot of time. Are we prepared to extend that timeline if necessary, or are we looking at the transitional period being a dual campus?
I think we're open. And put it this way, there were some voices asking if we could have the school combined by next year. And we're like, whoa, that's too quick.
Okay.
So yeah, I think there's some flexibility there, but I also think that when we decide to move forward, the sooner we can move forward unified, the better. But again, being wise, being judicious about that, yes, I think there's flexibility there.
Okay, because I feel like if that transitional period takes too long, we've never wanted a dual campus where we separate parts of the school. Our culture here is big kids with little kids. We've built that relationship. We'd like to keep that going, foster those relationships. And another question, is a new facility dependent on the property selling? Like, do we have to sell the properties in order to move forward with a newer location? Or, I don't know how to say that, like, maybe that's the right question, but if we sell our properties, I don't know how that timeline works. Like, can we sell the properties but stay here until we have a new location? Or is it, we find a new location, then we sell?
There's a bunch of options in there, and that's where there's just so many unknowns and ways that it could play out. But the answer is there's lots of options, and and it also includes that there might be some place that wants to rent a facility before we are able to sell it. So there's a couple different options there.
Yeah, I mean, from a real estate standpoint, you could do something on a sale leaseback that, we're going to lease the location after we sell it for a time. There are a lot of different options as far as that goes, so.
But again, to the property, there's just a lot of more study and investment of time and resources to figure out this will be the best plan long term, and that will take place after the fact. So.
Hello, Barb Greppo here. So I remember the meeting that we had M4M at Wisconsin Lutheran High School. Was it last year? Has it already been a year? And I know a lot has happened, but one of the things that had me really excited for the possibility of a merger is that one of the things that in our shifting and ever-changing world over the last several decades, we've noticed that we have a lot more working moms in the last 40 years, and a huge harvest field is the child care. And families need that, whether they think they need Christ or not. They definitely need childcare to be able to go to work. And we have, am I causing that? Is that me?
Back off there, perfect.
And we've outgrown, was my understanding, we can't expand based on ratio of space and number of children. We've outgrown. That just cuts us right out of a very huge ministry that we really need to be in. And I'm so excited for the possibility of a merger. It has me energized. For the last year, I've been dreaming about places and things, and when I see VJs or whatever that place is over there by the state fair that has sort of, been swallowed up now, and I look at that whole area, I have dreamt of a big church with a really huge beacon on top that's well lit, lots of glass. I picture places where young people want to come to get married. I pictured a planetarium, like a movie room where we can lay back and turn off the lights and see the stars or see Christian movies or feel music. I have envisioned our choirs merging. I have children that are on the brink of deciding whether they're going to stay here or move elsewhere, and I see what they crave. Look at radio stations that play music that they love to listen to, that they don't get any of that in our traditional WELS services. I look at how close we could be to Wisconsin Lutheran High School, adjacent to them, adjacent to WLC. There's a minefield full of, or a field full of foreign exchange students and unchurched students at both of those schools, and not a really super close congregation to them at all. St. John's Tosa is, but not in West Dallas. I look at State Fair right here, a brand new, amazing apartment building going up. I see lots of little things that are thriving, and to be honest, in this congregation, which I love, I feel like that dividing line of that freeway cuts us off from the hub of West Dallas. And if I had my opinion injected here, I would love to see us centrally located where the masses could come crawling. If you don't have, you need a bus line. If you are in apartments nearby, people could get there on foot or on a bus line. But we have to be highly visible on a hill so people can see us. I feel like on the other side of the freeway, we're so far removed, it doesn't do much. Passerbys going to and from State Fair would see something located in a more easterly or in a hub-centered location. And sure, there's lots of logistics, but I just want to share that I am super excited. I'm very willing, and I just can't wait to see where the Lord takes us if we're willing to just be used for His purpose. There are people dying every day, and every minute matters when you have dying souls. We need to love people, and we need to do it here in West Dallas. So, okay.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, she's got the vision, right? She's got this whole thing pictured out already, right? So two things. First of all, the childcare, huge blessing, and the opportunities for that have only grown. COVID and the restrictions on how many kids childcares can have has led a bunch of them in our area to close. So there are people out there searching, where can I drop my kid off at? I got to go to work. We would envision being able to, the dream is let's double the child care capacity, and be equipped to do that, and continue to use that as an outreach tool, a way to serve our community, a way to connect with our community. You mentioned young people and your own kids when it comes to music. Everybody has their own musical preference and taste, but here's what we did find through our study. There are only 2 churches that have been growing in the West Dallas area over the last 10 years. And both of them, Epicus and Crosspoint, are both theologically conservative. They're very true to the Bible. Except for the sacraments, they're not that far from us. One's Baptist, one's Presbyterian. But the worship style of both those churches is contemporary. Okay? So it's conservative theologically, contemporary in its worship, right? Now, what we're suggesting is blended, so it doesn't need to be all K-Love music, right? But let's use the best of the old and the new, and let's use instrumentation that does connect with the next generations, that leads us to stop seeing our kids disappear from the faith, but we're actually pulling them back in and growing. So, thank you.
Anything more from online?
Okay, so both Stephanie Bergerman and Linda Semro agree that the sooner we can worship is one, the better. And Stephanie Bergerman says that we would love to have a music staff, but that definitely depends on more people being willing to participate, and that won't happen until we know who is helping from all the different congregations.
We have resources in our current congregation. I also will tell you that a church that would approach a different worship style than traditional will begin to attract the people that want to help make that happen, musical skills. So all our churches have dabbled in doing a little bit more of a contemporary blended type worship. Most of our suburb churches are doing that as well. This kind of says, let's just go all in and quit messing around. Oh, one other comment about being close to Wisco and WLC. Had a meeting with President Fisher over at Wisco, and they have, they're 100 plus foreign exchange students that are over there. He says they have a hard time finding places for their unchurched students to go to church at a place that they feel that they would connect. He's seen our plan. He and I have talked about our plan. He said, if this is the kind of church that this merged church is going to be, we will bus our kids to your church to go to worship there.
Where was this?
President Fisher from Wisco, Wisconsin Lutheran High School.
Okay.
Yes? Normally, you don't need a microphone to project, I know.
Yeah. Mark Bergerman, a longtime member here. Our son was in first grade when we joined here, and now he's been a pastor for, 12, 13 years. In any event, when we're talking about blended worship, I assume it will be blended worship in the style of what Good Shepherds has done for more than 10 years, in that it is still worship that is confessional Lutheran worship, still worship that centers on God our Savior instead of centering on God our Preserver, or even worse yet, centering on I like you, God. Because obviously the vast majority of contemporary worship in the United States and the vast majority of contemporary worship songs are all centered on I, me, my. God, you make me feel so good, which is fine, but you can't build an entire service around that, or you lose what a worship service is supposed to center on, Christ our Savior. So I would suggest that maybe in your brochures you put that in there, that it will still be sermons and the songs that still center around, but not entirely, but still center around Christ our Savior.
Well, I think, I have participated in both our contemporary worship here and also at Divine Peace, and I would say there are a lot of similarities there. So.
Yeah, and the thing of our values, we make clear that we're here to preach Christ and proclaim the gospel, and we're not going to do anything that goes against the truth of God's word. But there are some different ways to express that faith in a worshipful way to the Lord. It's interesting. I love reading through the Psalms, and here's the example of God's people having voice to their faith, right? And you can read the Psalms, and so many of them point to God. God, this is who you are, right? You're my rock and my redeemer, and showcase the power of the Lord and the blessing we have in our God and Savior. There also are a whole bunch of the Psalms that say, God, I feel this way, and God, I'm hurting, or God, I feel this way, and God, I rejoice about this, and God, you make me strong in this way. So there are ways to emulate the Bible that honor God and our personal relationship with Him, that follow the pattern of the Scriptures. But you're right that some seem to almost leave God out of it sometimes. We're looking to use the best of old and new in a way that fits in with Lutheran theology and worship.
Anything additional online?
Stephanie Bergerman has added in that she thinks our praise team service does a great job of mixing in both the contemporary and regular, as we were just talking about. So,
good to hear from you, Steph. Well, if we have no further questions or comments, I guess we would look to wrap this up. For those that have questions, comments, concerns, please voice them. Reach out to us. We're happy to discuss, okay? We have been, as part of the M4M, we've kind of been living this over the past year, aside from a little time off for COVID. But, you know, this has been something that's just been in our blood and our DNA. So happy to talk about it. Want to know what the questions and concerns are. So please, like I said, talk to more members of the congregation. Let them know what's going on so we can be informed as we reach that decision time. So thank you very much.